The 17-year-old bully thought he'd found the perfect victim when he grabbed the quiet 8-year-old's shirt and lifted him off the ground, demanding his lunch money for the third time that week. But as the thunderous roar of 12 Harley-Davidsons rounded the corner and the kid whispered, "My dad's going to be here any minute," the bully's face went white as he realized he'd just made the biggest mistake of his life. What do you think happened when the Hells Angels president saw his son dangling from a stranger's fists? The autumn wind carries the scent of burning leaves and distant exhaust fumes through the chain-link fence surrounding Lincoln Elementary, where 17-year-old Marcus Hoffman leans against his rusted Honda Civic like a predator surveying his territory. His knuckles are already scarred from countless fights, his Letterman jacket hanging loose on his broad shoulders as he watches the younger kids stream out of the building with their colorful backpacks and innocent chatter. The smell of his father's Lucky Strikes still clings to his clothes from this morning's beating, another reminder that pain flows downhill in the Hoffman household. And today, Marcus needs someone smaller to absorb the rage that's been building since his old man's fist connected with his ribs at breakfast. The October sun casts long shadows across the cracked sidewalk, where discarded candy wrappers dance in the breeze, and Marcus's steel-gray eyes lock onto the perfect target, a small boy with dark hair walking alone, clutching a worn Superman backpack against his chest like armor. 8-year-old Tommy Castellano moves through the crowd of chattering children with the quiet grace of someone who's learned to make himself invisible, his brown eyes scanning the faces around him for signs of trouble, while his small fingers trace the frayed edges of his backpack's zipper. The bag carries more than just schoolbooks and pencils. It holds the last peanut butter sandwich his mother ever made him, now stale and forgotten in the bottom compartment. A talisman he can't bring himself to throw away even 3 months after the accident. His Superman t-shirt, a birthday gift from happier times, hangs slightly too large on his thin frame, the fabric soft from countless washings and tears shed during those first terrible weeks when nightmares would wake him screaming for a mother who would never answer again. The sound of his sneakers scraping against concrete mingles with the distant hum of traffic on Miller Road, where 18-wheelers carry their cargo past the auto shops and dive bars that define this working-class neighborhood. And Tommy quickens his pace as he notices Marcus pushing off from his car with the lazy confidence of a hunter who spotted easy prey. "Hey, Superman," Marcus calls out, his voice carrying that particular mixture of false friendliness and underlying menace that every bullied kid learns to recognize. And Tommy's stomach drops as he realizes there's nowhere to run, no teacher in sight, just the empty stretch of sidewalk between school property and the bus stop where his father Jake will pick him up in 20 minutes. Marcus's boots hit the pavement with deliberate heaviness as he approaches, and Tommy can smell the stale cigarette smoke mixed with cheap cologne that seems to follow bullies everywhere, a signature scent of violence and insecurity. "Where you going so fast, little man? We need to have ourselves a conversation about the lunch money you owe me," Marcus says, his hands flexing into fists that have already learned the satisfying crunch of cartilage against bone, and in the distance, so faint it might be imagination, comes the first whisper of thunder that sounds almost like approaching motorcycles. Marcus's calloused hands shoot out faster than Tommy can react, gripping the soft cotton of the Superman t-shirt with the casual brutality of someone who's never faced real consequences for his actions, lifting the smaller boy until his sneakers dangle inches above the sidewalk, like a scarecrow caught in a windstorm. Tommy's backpack slides off his shoulder and hits the ground with a muffled thud, spilling pencils and the dog-eared copy of Where the Red Fern Grows across the cracked concrete, while the stale peanut butter sandwich his mother made rolls into the gutter where it belongs with all the other forgotten pieces of his old life. "This is the third time this week, Superman," Marcus growls, his breath hot against Tommy's face, carrying the scent of energy drinks and the particular desperation that comes from knowing you're nothing at home but everything in moments like these, when smaller kids tremble and power flows through your fists. like electricity through copper wire. Tommy's feet kick uselessly at empty air as he struggles to find purchase, his small hands wrapped around Marcus's thick wrists in a futile attempt to relieve the pressure against his throat, and he can taste copper in his mouth, where his teeth cut into his tongue during the sudden jerk upward. The world tilts at a dangerous angle as blood rushes to his head, and through the spots dancing across his vision, he can see other kids hurrying past, with their heads down, following the unwritten rule of survival that says you don't get involved when Marcus Hoffman is working. You just pray he doesn't notice you next. Please, Tommy whispers through lips that feel swollen and strange, the word barely audible above the sound of his own heartbeat thundering in his ears. And he thinks about his father's promise that morning, over Lucky Charms and chocolate milk. The vow that things would get better, that they'd build a new life together piece by piece, until the nightmares stopped and the world felt safe again. The distant rumble that began as whisper now grows to a steady growl, mechanical and rhythmic, like the heartbeat of some massive metal beast approaching through the maze of suburban streets. And Marcus is too intoxicated by his own dominance to notice the way Tommy's expression changes from fear to something else entirely. Recognition mixed with the faintest hint of hope. My dad taught me that bullies are just scared kids who never learned how to ask for help, Tommy says quietly, his voice steady despite the pressure against his windpipe. And Marcus laughs with the harsh sound of breaking glass, because what could an 8-year-old possibly know about the complex mathematics of pain and power that govern places like Lincoln Elementary? The rumble becomes a roar, unmistakable now, as the sound of multiple Harley-Davidson engines downshifting through the intersection 2 blocks away. And Tommy's brown eyes find Marcus's gray ones, with the calm certainty of a child who's learned that sometimes salvation arrives exactly when you need it most. He also taught me that some people are more protected than others, Tommy adds, his words carrying the weight of bedtime stories about brotherhood and loyalty, about patches earned through blood and choices that echo through generations, while the mechanical thunder grows so loud that even Marcus can no longer ignore it, his grip loosening slightly as his head turns toward Miller Road, where 12 black motorcycles are about to round the corner, like the 4 horsemen multiplied by 3. My dad's going to be here any minute, Tommy whispers. And for the first time in his 17 years of inflicting pain on those weaker than himself, Marcus Hoffman feels the cold kiss of genuine terror as he realizes that some mistakes can't be undone. Some children carry protection deeper than any cape. And sometimes, the thunder you hear in the distance isn't weather at all, but justice arriving on 2 wheels with the fury of a father who would burn the world to keep his son safe. The black Harley-Davidsons emerge around the corner, like mechanical predators hunting in perfect formation, their chrome catching the afternoon sunlight and throwing it back in brilliant flashes that momentarily blind everyone watching, while the synchronized rumble of 12 finely tuned V-twin engines creates a symphony of controlled power that makes the ground beneath their feet vibrate with primordial authority. Marcus's hands fly open, as if Tommy's Superman t-shirt has suddenly become molten metal, and the boy drops to his feet with cat-like grace, immediately stumbling backward toward his scattered belongings, while his tormentor stands frozen like a deer caught in headlights, finally understanding that some storms announce themselves with thunder before unleashing lightning that can split trees and shatter lives. The lead bike carries a man whose presence fills the entire street, despite his average height, his weathered leather vest bearing patches that tell stories of brotherhood forged in fire, of choices made in back alleys and honky-tonk parking lots, where disputes get settled with fists and loyalty gets measured in blood spilled for strangers who become family. Jake Castellano cuts his engine with deliberate precision, the sudden silence more threatening than any roar could ever be. And when he removes his matte black helmet, his face reveals the kind of controlled fury that comes from watching your child dangle from another man's fists while you're still a block away. calculating the exact number of seconds it would take to cross that distance and deliver the kind of justice that leaves permanent impressions. His steel gray hair is pulled back in a ponytail that reaches halfway down his vest, and the eagle tattoo on his right forearm flexes as his hands clench and unclench with the rhythm of a man fighting to maintain composure when every instinct screams for immediate and overwhelming violence. "You got exactly 3 seconds to explain why my boy was flying through the air like a rag doll," he says quietly, his voice carrying the weight of a man who's buried friends and survived wars that most people only see in movies, while behind him 11 other riders dismount in perfect synchronization, their boots hitting asphalt, like a countdown to Judgment Day. Marcus tries to speak, but only manages a strangled whimper. As he takes in the full scope of his miscalculation, these aren't weekend warriors playing dress-up in leather costumes, but the real thing, men who've earned their patches through decades of brotherhood, tested in courtrooms and prison yards, in hospital waiting rooms, and funeral homes, where they've said goodbye to too many brothers who rode too fast, or loved too hard, or simply ran out of luck. In a world that doesn't forgive mistakes, the winged death's head on Jake's vest seems to stare directly into Marcus's soul, with hollow sockets that have witnessed more violence than any 17-year-old suburban bully could imagine. And suddenly, all those fights in school hallways and parking lots feel like children's games compared to the lethal potential radiating from these 12 men, who live by codes older than the Constitution and more binding than any legal contract. We were just talking," Marcus stammers, his voice cracking like a 13-year-old's. And Tommy quietly gathers his spilled belongings, while watching his father transform from the gentle man who makes Mickey Mouse pancakes on Sunday mornings into something primal and dangerous. A reminder that protection sometimes wears leather and rides steel. The other children who moments ago hurried past with downcast eyes now peek from behind cars and trees, with the morbid fascination that draws crowds to accidents, sensing that they're witnessing the kind of moment that becomes legend in school hallways. The story that gets told and retold until Marcus Hoffman becomes a cautionary tale about the importance of choosing your victims carefully. Jake steps forward with the measured pace of an apex predator who knows his prey has nowhere to run, and the afternoon sun creates a halo effect around his silhouette that makes him look less like a man and more like an avenging angel, dispatched from some higher court of justice, where fathers who fail to protect their children are condemned to watch other fathers succeed where they have failed. Marcus staggers backward until his spine hits the chain-link fence surrounding the school playground, the metal rattling with the impact while his legs shake so violently he can barely remain upright. And in his peripheral vision, he can see other students recording everything with their phones, already composing the social media posts that will immortalize this moment as the day the untouchable Marcus Hoffman learned that some lines should never be crossed. Some children carry protection deeper than any superhero's cape. Jake kneels down to his son's level, his massive hands gentle as butterfly wings as he smooths Tommy's rumpled Superman t-shirt, checking for bruises or cuts, with the practiced efficiency of a father who spent too many nights in emergency rooms. And Tommy sees not the feared president of a motorcycle club, but simply the man who holds him during thunderstorms and reads "Good Night, Moon" in funny voices until the nightmares fade into manageable shadows. "You okay, little man?" Jake asks softly, his voice stripped of all the menace it carried moments ago, replaced by the tender concern that only exists between fathers and their children. And Tommy nods while wrapping his small arms around his dad's neck, breathing in the familiar scent of leather and motor oil and Old Spice that means safety in a world that too often feels dangerous and unpredictable. The 12 motorcycles idle like sleeping dragons as Jake stands slowly, lifting Tommy effortlessly onto his shoulders, where the boy can survey his kingdom from a height that makes even high school seniors look small and manageable. And Marcus finally finds his voice long enough to stammer an apology that sounds hollow and desperate in the crystalline clarity of the October afternoon. "Sorry, don't fix what's already broken, son," Jake replies with the weary patience of a man who's seen too many Marcus Hoffmans come and go. Boys who mistake cruelty for strength and power for purpose until life teaches them the difference through hard lessons that leave permanent scars. And he reaches into his vest pocket to pull out a business card for his auto shop, pressing it into Marcus's trembling hand with surprising gentleness. "You want to learn what real strength looks like? You come by the garage after school. We'll put you to work, changing oil and rotating tires, until you understand that protecting people is harder than hurting them, and a hell of a lot more rewarding." The engines roar back to life as Jake settles Tommy onto the seat behind him, the boy's small hands gripping his father's vest, while the convoy prepares to escort them home through streets where word will spread faster than wildfire. About the day, justice arrived on two wheels, with the fury of unconditional love. Marcus watches them disappear around the corner, toward Miller Road, the sound of their departure echoing off the buildings like distant thunder, promising clear skies ahead, and he looks down at the business card in his shaking hands, reading the words, "Castellano's Auto Repair. We fix what's broken," while understanding for the first time that some breaks can't be seen from the outside, that healing requires different tools than destruction, and that tomorrow he might just have the courage to walk through those garage doors and ask a man who could have destroyed him to teach him how to build something better instead. The autumn wind carries the scent of possibility through the chain-link fence, where Tommy's scattered pencils still lie forgotten on the cracked sidewalk, and somewhere in the distance, a small boy's laughter mingles with the rumble of Harley-Davidson engines, creating a symphony of protection that will echo through the halls of Lincoln Elementary long after the last motorcycle disappears into the gathering dusk, leaving behind only the memory of the day when a bully learned that some children are guarded by angels who wear leather wings and ride steel horses, and that sometimes the greatest strength comes not from the power to destroy, but from the wisdom to show mercy when destruction would be so much easier.